Everyone in the arena laughed when they saw the human step forward. He looked weak compared to the others. No shiny armor, no sharp claws, no glowing eyes. Just a man in basic combat gear, his face half hidden under a dented helmet. The crowd wanted blood, not disappointment. And this human looked like he didn't belong here. Across the arena stood Commander Varela of the Varnak Empire. Over 7 feet tall, her muscles glowed under the arena lights, and her reputation was legendary. She'd never lost a fight in the Emperor's ring, and her crimson blade had already taken down warriors from 9 different worlds. When her eyes landed on the human, she scoffed and turned to the audience. She raised one clawed hand and shouted, "Is this a joke? You bring me a weakling to entertain me." The crowd roared with laughter, but the human didn't move. He just stood there, calm and still, like he didn't even hear the insult. The announcer's voice rang through the stadium, announcing him as Unit 47K. Species, human, rank, labor class, status, expendable. The title made some aliens snort. Commander Varela rolled her shoulders and stepped forward, dragging her blade across the metal floor, sparks flying with each step. "I'll make this quick," she said, her eyes glowing red. The gong sounded. The match began. She rushed forward, swinging her blade in a fast horizontal slash meant to tear through bone. But the human ducked, twisted on one foot, and slipped behind her. His movement was sharp, clean, efficient, nothing like what they expected from a labor-class species. The crowd gasped as he landed a punch to the back of her leg that made her stagger. She spun, growling, now taking him seriously. But it was too late. He didn't wait for her to recover. He moved like a ghost, avoiding her heavy swings and jabbing in quick strikes at her ribs and joints. Varela was strong, but her strength worked against her. Every swing she missed left her open. Every step she took, he was already gone. The alien crowd went silent. What was happening in front of them wasn't just unexpected, was impossible. A low-rank human couldn't do this. He wasn't even enhanced. No cybernetics, no venom sacs, no exobones. Just flesh, speed, and skill. She shouted, furious now, charging with both hands gripping her sword. He let her come. At the last moment, he stepped aside and let her momentum carry her forward. She crashed into the wall, the blade slipping from her hands. The human kicked it away and then walked toward her slowly. Varela turned, her breathing heavy, face red with rage and embarrassment. "Who trained you?" she demanded. He didn't answer. Instead, he reached up and took off his helmet. His eyes were calm and his voice was quiet. "You assumed too much from the beginning. That was your mistake," she snarled and rushed him. Again, barehanded now, aiming to tear his throat open. But his foot caught her mid-charge and flipped her over his back. She hit the ground hard, the air leaving her lungs with a heavy grunt. The arena lights shifted, signaling defeat. The human had won. Silence. Then, a slow clap echoed from the Emperor's box, followed by a full eruption of noise from the shocked audience. For the first time, Varela, the undefeated commander, was flat on her back. Defeated by a low-rank species, the human offered his hand. She hesitated, then took it. As he pulled her up, she stared into his eyes and saw something deeper than strength, discipline, restraint, focus. He could have ended Herb. He didn't. "You're not what I expected," she said, barely loud enough to hear, "and neither are you," he replied before turning away. Back in the locker room, other fighters stared at him as he passed. Some in fear, some in respect, others in quiet curiosity. But one thing was clear: he wasn't invisible anymore. His name wasn't even known yet. But everyone would remember what he did in the arena that day. The arena's control center buzzed with nervous chatter after the match. No one had expected the human to win. especially not against Commander Virella. Her record was flawless. Her rage after the fight was even louder than the audience's cheers. Virella stormed into the officer's chamber, tossing aside her gear. Her sharp eyes burned as she slammed her clawed hand onto the steel wall. That was no ordinary human, she growled. Her second in command, a violet-scaled alien named Raxiel, stepped forward cautiously. His file says he's just labor class. Unranked background, mining colonies, no military history, no upgrades. Nothing special. Virella narrowed her eyes. Then either the files lie, or we've just witnessed something the Empire doesn't understand yet. Meanwhile, in the underground levels of the arena, the human sat quietly on a bench, wiping blood from his gloves. He wasn't smiling. Wasn't proud. He looked like he had done exactly what was expected of him. A young alien medic approached nervously, holding a scan tool. She was from a species known for their healing abilities, with glowing white skin and soft hands. "You're not injured?" she asked. He shook his head. "Not enough to matter." She glanced at her scanner. "But your muscles, your joints, they aren't enhanced, but the readings are abnormal. You move like someone born for war." He didn't answer. Instead, he looked up at the ceiling as if searching for something lost in memory. "I wasn't born for war. I was forced into it." His words carried weight, but she didn't press further. Instead, she scanned him again. "Your vitals are strong, but your nervous system shows signs of extreme training." "Who trained you?" "No one the Empire remembers," he said quietly. At that moment, a new figure entered the room, a tall, silver-armored alien with glowing green emblems across his shoulders. He was a ranking official from the Imperial Combat Board. "The Emperor wishes to speak with you," he announced flatly. The human stood without hesitation. The medic looked surprised. "The Emperor? But why would he?" The armored official. "Cut her off, because the Emperor takes interest in anomalies. And this human, apparently, is a living anomaly." The human followed the guard through long corridors, past chambers filled with trophies, weapons, and banners of conquered species. Finally, they entered the throne hall, where the Emperor of the Varnic Empire sat, a massive being with 6 eyes and a robe made of living silkworms. "You fought with precision," the Emperor said. "Too much for your rank. Too much for your species." "Explain." "I did what I was trained to do," the human replied, voice steady. "When? Who trained you?" The Emperor asked. "Earth doesn't exist anymore," the human said. "But my instructors did." "Before your fleets erased them," the Emperor leaned back slightly, his many fingers folding together. "So you are a survivor of the Terran Purge." "I am," the human confirmed. There was silence for a moment. Then the Emperor gave a slow nod. "Then your skill is no accident. Your people fought like beasts before extinction. But you're something rarer. You adapted, survived, and now you fight with purpose." The human didn't flinch. "I don't fight for entertainment. I fight because you gave me no other choice." The Emperor smirked. "You'll have more choices now. You've been entered into the elite tier. From now on, you'll face champions, not commanders, and the stakes will be higher." He turned toward the official. "Assign him a name. Something the audience can remember." The official nodded and pulled out a holopad. Designation: Ghostblade, back in her private chamber. Commander Virella watched the replay of the fight over and over again. She zoomed in on every movement, every dodge, every blow. Her pride was damaged, but her curiosity was stronger. She had seen warriors fall before, but not like this. This human hadn't just won. He had calculated, controlled, dominated. She tapped. Her claws on the table. "Kana need to know more," she whispered to herself. A message pinged on her console. She opened it. It was a challenge request from the human, but not to fight, to train. Varela stared at the challenge request on her screen. It wasn't written in arrogance or mockery. Just 5 words. Train with me. No blades. Her pride flared again, but underneath it, something stirred, something that hadn't moved in years. She accepted without replying. The training room was empty when she arrived, lit by the soft blue glow of overhead crystals. It wasn't like the Arenino cheering. No bloodlust, no rules. Just silence and mats. The human stood at the center, arms crossed, breathing slow and steady. "You still think you can teach me something?" she asked, cracking her knuckles. "No," he said. "I think we can teach each other," she scoffed but stepped onto the mat anyway. "Fine, but if you insult me with slow punches or mercy, I'll rip your spine out." "Understood," he replied calmly. They circled each other. The first strike came from her fast sweep meant to knock him down. He blocked with his knee, spun, and countered with an elbow. Their moves were quick, sharp, clean. No wasted motion, no hesitation. 10 minutes passed, then 20. Their bodies moved like 2 storms colliding, not in chaos, but in rhythm. For the first time, Varela wasn't thinking about victory. She was focused on the flow, on learning. On him, she landed a blow to his shoulder that would have dislocated most warriors. He didn't even flinch. He caught her wrist during a punch and gently twisted, bringing her to the ground, not painfully, but precisely. Then he let her go. She rolled to her feet and stared at him. "You fight like someone carrying a burden," she said. He looked away. "Because I am." She stepped closer. "What did they take from you?" He didn't answer at first. Then he said, "My planet, my brothers, my mother, my name." She blinked. "You don't even have a name." "Not anymore," he replied. "The Empire erased it. Like everything else, so I let it go." Something in her chest tightened. She had heard of Earth's destruction. But the way he spoke there was no bitterness in his voice. Just quiet. "Wait, like a scar too deep to heal. You hate us," she said, not as a question, but a truth. He shook his head. "If I hated, I wouldn't be standing here with you." They resumed their practice. Faster now, more personal. Her movements softened slightly. His hands grew more confident with each block and parry. They weren't enemies now. They were 2 warriors finding respect in each other's silence. After an hour, they stopped, breathing hard, sweat dripping from their foreheads. Varela sat on the floor, stretching her arms. "You fight like water," she said, "but inside, there's fire. You hide it well." "I've had 2, he replied. She looked at him sideways. "You're not like the other humans I've seen. You don't beg, you don't boast, you don't even ask for reward." "I'm not here to impress anyone," he said. "I'm just trying to stay alive, and maybe change a few minds while I'm at it." She chuckled. "You changed mine. I haven't respected anyone in years. Not even my own generals." He nodded. "That's why I challenged you. I don't need fans. I need an ally who understands what comes next." She tilted her head. "What comes next?" He stood and looked toward the training room's dark ceiling. "I saw your war charts. The Emperor is preparing something bigger. Not just arena fights, not just gladiator games. He's planning full conquest of the remaining free systems." Varela frowned. "How do you know that?" "I hear things. I listen. And I see the signs. You felt it too, didn't you? That last battle you led off-world, didn't something seem off?" She went quiet, then nodded slowly. "We weren't told the whole truth. Our mission wasn't just suppression. It was extermination. Entire villages wiped clean. They didn't even fight back." He looked at her, eyes steady. "Then you know why I'm here. Not just to win fights, but to gather those strong enough to resist. She stood, staring at him like she was seeing him for the first time. "You want me to betray my emperor?" "I want you to follow your honor," he said. "You're not a machine. You felt the lie. That means you still have a soul." Varela didn't answer right away. She looked down at her claw's hands, trained for violence, for obedience. But something had changed in her. A crack in the armor. A whisper of rebellion. "I'll think about it," she finally said. The Emperor's War Council chamber was full of cold silence. Holographic maps hovered in the air, showing flashing red zones where new uprisings had started. Systems that were supposed to be under full control were suddenly unstable again. Whispers of resistance were spreading faster than the Empire could contain them. At the center of the room stood High Strategist Ulvik, his long robes dragging on the floor, his 6 eyes narrowed. "Someone is fueling these sparks," he hissed. "Someone." Within our walls, behind him, Commander Varela stood at attention. Her expression was still, unreadable. But inside, her thoughts spun like fire. She had spent the last 2 nights thinking about the human's words, about what he'd said, about what she'd seen with her own eyes. Villages wiped out, children buried under rubble. Orders that no longer felt right. She clenched her fists as Ulvik continued. "The human who beat Uyuna for 7 keys, now being cheered across the outer colonies. They call him Ghostblade. Some even call him Hope." Varela's jaw tightened. She hated losing, but she hated lies more. She stepped forward. "Permission to speak." Ulvik turned, surprised. "Granted, I request to investigate him personally. I want to know his true past, his training, his contacts. If he is a threat, I'll end it myself." The strategist studied her for a moment. "You want revenge?" "I want clarity," she replied. Ulvik smiled faintly. "Granted, bring me what you find. Or bring me his head." Meanwhile, the human walked through the back alleys of the combat quarters. His fame was growing. But he avoided attention. He had no time for celebrations. He met quietly with 3 other fighters from different species. Each one tired of the Empire's chains. One had been a prince before his world was burned. Another was a medic who had healed both sides during the border massacres. The last was a former slave girl with fire in her blood and poison on her tongue. They sat together around a stolen projector, showing a map of the Empire's trade routes. "We need to strike where it hurts," the human said. "But not with brute force. With precision. We make them fear what they can't control." The others nodded. They all had reasons to fight. And now, they had a leader who gave them focus. Suddenly, the door slid open with a low hiss. Everyone jumped, reaching for weapons, but it was Varela. She stepped inside, unarmed. The others looked at her in shock. She, the champion of the Empire, standing in a rebel hideout. The medic whispered, "Is this a trap?" The human raised a hand. "Let her speak." Varela didn't waste time. She looked directly at him. "You were right. I saw the war logs myself. The Empire isn't conquering anymore. It's erasing. And it won't stop until every planet kneels or dies." The room went quiet. She walked closer. "I don't serve monsters. Not anymore. If this is the side that still values truth, then I fight for it." The slave girl stood slowly, eyes narrowed. "Why should we trust you?" Varela looked at her. "Because I've killed 4 lies. And I don't want my hands stained any more than they already are." The human nodded. "Then welcome. But understand, there's no going back after this. The Emperor will know you've betrayed him the moment you step off that path." She gave a bitter smile. "Then I'll make sure my footsteps shake the whole palace." Later that night, they moved through the shadows of the city's underlayers. The plan was simple. Hijack a communications relay used by the Empire to broadcast propaganda. If they could take control for just 2 minutes, they could send a message across a dozen star systems. The human and Varela moved as a pair, silent and swift. She was surprised how well they fought side by side. Their styles matched like puzzle. Pieces his speed, her power. Precision, her reach. When they reached the relay core, alarms triggered. Imperial bots swarmed the hallways, metal claws clicking and rifles charging. The human took cover and fired back. "We need 30 seconds." He shouted. Varela stood her ground at the doorway, holding back the bots. Her claws ripped through metal, her roars echoing like a beast from legend. "Then stop talking and start uploading." The medic plugged in the transmitter. The screen flickered. "Ready? Sending now." Across the stars, in colonies ruled by fear, screens lit up. And for the first time, the people didn't see orders. They saw a face. A human face. Calm, brave, strong. He spoke only 5 words. "You are not alone anymore." Varela moved through the shadows of the city like she had done in her early soldier days. Except this time, she wasn't hunting for rebels or traitors. She was hunting the truth. The Emperor's forces had responded swiftly after the broadcast. Propaganda towers were rebuilt. Dissenters were dragged into the street. Entire colonies were cut off from power, food, and water. But something had changed. Fear wasn't working anymore. People were rising. Quietly, at first whispers, secret. Meetings, missing weapons, but now bolder. Graffiti appeared on walls. "Ghostblade lives. Rise, do not kneel. Varela fights with us." The Empire's grip was weakening with every passing day. Inside a crumbling safe house, the human paced slowly, watching data streams flicker. "Across the dusty screen, they're reacting faster than we expected," said the medic, adjusting her headset. "We don't have weeks, we have days," the former prince agreed. "If we wait too long, they'll shut down every passage into the inner system. We'll be trapped out here with the noise while the real war is decided behind gold walls." The human stayed quiet, his eyes locked on the hologram of the Citadel, the Empire's core stronghold. "Then we move," he said. "Soon, we hit the Citadel, not with an army, but with something worse: truth." Varela stepped closer to the screen. "You're not going to like what I found," she said. He turned to her. She took a breath. "The Emperor knows who you really are." The room went quiet. "I accessed old military archives," she continued. "Before Earth was erased. Before the Terran Purge. You weren't just some soldier. You were part of Project Echofall, a unit trained not to win battles but to end wars. You were supposed to be dead." The others looked at him, shocked. But the human didn't flinch. "I was. Until they buried the truth with my name," he said. The medic stepped forward, voice trembling. "They experimented on humans like weapons. That's what Echofall was. They broke your bones to make them stronger. They burned your nerves too. Make them faster. You're not just skilled. You're engineered." Varela narrowed her eyes. "Why didn't you tell us?" The human looked around the room. "Because I didn't want to be followed for what they made me. I wanted to be followed for what I chose." They were silent again. But now, the silence was heavier. "I'm not a symbol," he said. "I'm not a leader. I'm just a man who refused to stay broken. And I know how their system works. I know how to bring it down from the inside. But I won't do it without all of you." Varela stepped beside him. "Then we go together." The plan was brutal in its simplicity. Sneak past the outer patrols using stolen codes. Slip into the docking tier of the Citadel. Disrupt their central network. Expose the Truth Project Echofall, the Terran Purge, the corrupted court. And end it all in one strike. But everyone knew the cost. The slave girl smiled as she polished her blades. "We've already died once under the Empire. Time to show them ghosts can kill. The prince gripped his spear. We fall as warriors, not property. The medic wiped a tear from her eye. Let the next generation remember this day not as the end of rebellion, but the start of freedom. Before they left, Virella sat with the human alone in the training room. No words were spoken at first. Only the quiet sounds of distant ships leaving the surface. I hated you once, she said finally. I know, he replied. I thought you embarrassed me, humiliated me. But what you did freed me, she said. He looked at her. Then you weren't the enemy. Just a prisoner who hadn't seen the bars yet. She stepped closer. If we don't make it back, we will, he interrupted. She smirked. You always this confident? No, he said. But I've learned that courage isn't about confidence. It's about choosing to stand even when everything tells you to kneel. She nodded. Then they walked out, side by side, toward the stars. Toward the citadel. Toward the war that would decide everything. The Empire was no longer silent. Within hours of the human's message being broadcast, chaos spread across the stars. Slaves refused to work. Outposts stopped sending reports. Whole fleets went dark. A single voice had shaken a system built over centuries, and at the center of it stood a man without a name. They called him Ghostblade. Now, even in the darkest colonies, his name was whispered like a secret prayer. Not because he had power, but because he had defied power and lived. Virella stood beside him on a stolen cruiser as it sped through hyperspace. She watched the stars blur outside the window, her claws twitching with tension. You do realize the Emperor will send everything he has after us now. The human nodded. Let him. That's what we want. She turned to face him. You don't care about survival, do you? I care about victory, he said. The medic entered, her face pale. We intercepted Imperial chatter. The Emperor activated the Omega Protocol. He's summoning every arena champion, every elite guard, and the High Executioner. They'll come to crush us in one strike. The slave girl leaned on the doorframe. Let them try. We're not running anymore. The former prince stepped into the light and placed a glowing dado ship on the table. I found a weak point. The Emperor's flagship, Eclipse Fang, will dock at the Grand Citadel for fuel in 2 days. If we can strike there, it will end in blood, Virella said flatly. That place is a fortress. The human picked up the chip. Good. Then we stormed the gates. One last message. Not through words, through action. They knew it was suicide. But none of them cared. Inside the Grand Citadel, the Emperor waited. Surrounded by his most loyal guards, he watched the rebellion unfold through layers of holly screens. Planets blinking. Red, supply chains collapsing. Generals whispering doubt behind closed doors, his lips curled into a snarl. So the insect thinks himself a lion, he growled. Ulvik, standing to his side, adjusted his hood. He is clever, but he is still flesh. Give the order, and he'll be dust by morning. The Emperor raised his hand slowly. Let him come. Let him see what it means to challenge the gods. 2 days later, a small stolen freighter approached the docking ring of the Grand Citadel. The patrol ships didn't fire. They didn't recognize the threat until it was too late. Inside that freighter were 7 warriors. Each had lost something. Each was ready to give everything. Virella adjusted her armor, her blade humming at her side. What's the plan once we're inside? The human answered, calm and clear. We split, cause chaos. Draw the forces away from the throne room. I'll go to the Emperor. You alone, the prince asked. I started this. I finish it. He replied. When the freighter docked, they moved like shadows through the metal halls. Alarms blared, and the citadel awakened with roaring defense systems. Dozens of elite guards rushed in, but Virella met them head-on. Claws flashing, fangs bared. The prince detonated the east corridor, flooding it with fire. The medic used her stims to revive fallen allies and disable soldiers without killing them. The slave girl danced through enemy lines with knives coated in sleep dust, but the human moved alone. He climbed higher through the citadel's inner spires, cutting through elite defenders with precision. Not rage, not hate, just purpose. Finally, he reached the golden doors of the Emperor's chamber. They opened slowly, hissing with steam. Inside, the throne was vast, built from bones and metal. And there sat the Emperor, his 6 eyes glowing, his armored arms resting calmly as if this were nothing more than a visit. "You came." The Emperor said, "You made it necessary." The human replied. Behind the throne stood Ulvik, drawing a black blade. "You won't reach him." The human stepped forward, his own hands empty. "You've ruled by fear. Now feel what it's like to face someone with none." Ulvik lunged. The human sidestepped, grabbed the sword arm, and twisted it sharply, disarming him. In one smooth motion, he swept Ulvik's legs and slammed him to the floor. The Emperor stood slowly. Impressive, but still mortal. The human grabbed Ulvik's blade and pointed it at the throne. Maybe. But even gods bleed when cut deep enough. The Emperor charged. What followed was a storm. The two clashed in the center of the throne. Room, metal against will, claws against flesh. The Emperor was a monster faster and stronger than any soldier before. But the human had one thing the Emperor didn't. Control. He blocked the wild strikes, endured the pain, and kept moving. When the Emperor's arm cracked his ribs, he grunted, but didn't fall. When his claws sliced his cheek, he stepped in closer. And when the Emperor roared and lifted him by the throat, the human used that moment to drive Ulvik's blade into his side. The Emperor staggered. The human fell to his knees, blood dripping from his mouth. "You rule by crushing hope," he said, "but it's hope that brought me here." The Emperor collapsed, clutching his wound. "This changes nothing. No, the Empire is eternal." "Not anymore," the human whispered. The throne room door burst open. Varela stepped inside, covered in cuts, her blade red-hot. She stared at the fallen Emperor, then at the human. "Is it done?" He nodded once. She helped him to his feet. The citadel shook as rebel ships breached the outer walls. The people were rising, the fear was broken, and the symbol of oppression had fallen. Outside, the sky was full of light. The citadel burned behind them as they stepped into the daylight. Ash rained from the sky like snow. Sirens wailed in every direction. But it was not the sound of order, it was the sound of something dying. The human leaned against the wall, blood soaking his side. He could barely stand, but he refused to fall. Varela stood beside him, her armor cracked and blackened. One of her arms hung useless, and her left eye was swollen shut. But she was alive, and the Emperor was not. Below the tower, thousands of people emerged from the ruins of the city. Workers, soldiers, servants, and slaves, they had seen the broadcast. They had seen the Emperor bleed, and now they saw the ones who brought him down. The medic rushed to the human side. "You're hurt bad," she said. "I'll live." He whispered. The former prince climbed over rubble, dragging the limp body of a defeated general. He tossed it aside. "The council has fled. They're scattering like insects." The slave girl came last, still breathing hard, her knives dripping. "It's over," she said, voice trembling, but the human shook his head. "No, it's just beginning." He pushed away from the wall and limped to the edge of the platform, looking down at the broken empire. The Emperor is dead, but the people below some still believe in chains. Some still fear freedom. We can't win with blades alone. Now we rebuild. Varela nodded. "And how do we begin?" He looked at her with tired eyes. we let them choose. We don't replace one ruler with another. We build something new. Together, that night, a fire lit the skies of the capital world, not from destruction, but from beacons placed on every tower. Light replaced shadow. Voices rose in the streets, not in screams, but in song, and in the heart of the old arena once, a place of violence and slavery. A new gathering took place, not to watch fighters die, but to hear truth. The human stood at the center. No longer a weapon, no longer a number, no longer Ghostblade. Just a man. I don't want to rule, he said, speaking to the thousands before him. I don't want statues or crowns. I want each of you to remember that it wasn't strength that won this fight. 'Twas unity. It was belief. And it was choice. He stepped down from the stage. The crowd parted for him. Not in fear, but in respect. Varela met him at the base of the stairs. So, what will you do now? He smiled faintly. Disappear, I think. Let the stories grow without me. I was never the future, just the spark. She tilted her head. And if I wanted to follow, he paused. You wouldn't be following, he said. You'd be walking beside me. She smiled. The first real smile she had allowed herself in years. In the weeks that followed, the empire fractured, but not into chaos. Into hope. Colonies that had been silenced began to speak, while soldiers laid down their weapons. The empire's great banners were pulled down one by one. The old systems tried to rise against new tyrants, new crowns. But they were met by a united front of free species who remembered the blood that had bought their chance, and the human who had once been nameless became a legend not for power, but for his refusal to use it. Varela stayed close to him, not as a protector, not as a warrior, but as a friend who had once stood on the other side and chosen to change. Together, they traveled far beyond the core systems, seeking broken places to mend, forgotten people to lift, and old enemies to turn into something better. And sometimes, just sometimes, when the stars were quiet, and the war felt like a dream, she would ask, "Do you miss the arena?" And he would answer, "Only the part where I proved them all wrong. The end."